Hello, it's John, Shopkeep Artie. We've got a brilliant start to a 4-part series with Howard Jones. Today, focusing on the season that is behind me, winter. It's all about seasonal palettes and what you have in your palette, what different types of colour mixtures, so that if you're going out plein air sketching and painting, you'll have the right type of materials with you, and I'm sure there'll be loads more covered as well. I'm really intrigued to see how these 4 series episodes work. Right, without further ado, let's bring Howard in and say hello. Hi Howard, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you, John, and yourself.
Yes, brilliant. So yeah, seasonal palettes and seasonal painting. I guess I've never really thought about it, to be honest. But I guess you do have to think, okay, right, well, I'm going out there plein air painting now, and we're in summer or whatever, and you probably have a variety of different colors. And I guess, does that save a lot of time? Or, well, no, I guess
It,
it makes the painting more realistic.
there's that, but what I like about it when you're considering the seasons is you have to start thinking about your color theory or your understanding of the use of color because it varies. So, you know, if you're used to perhaps painting one season only, maybe because you're painting from photos, they might be holiday snaps, whatever. There's always that danger that you're using the same palette for every season, so that when you do shift from a summer scene into winter or autumn or spring, you're trying to get those effects from the wrong palette, from the wrong color palette. So
Mm.
it's going to be very useful for that. Like
No,
this.
that makes total sense. And Trina said this is a fabulous topic. I'd never really thought about different palette colors for different seasons, but it makes total sense, and it does
Mm.
really when you think about it. And but you probably, I would imagine that the lion's share of people with their paint palette, they probably just keep the same paints in there all year
I
round.
I did. I used to till I learnt better, you know. But absolutely. I mean, I'm sure there's people out there that don't, that are quite au fait with this situation. But yeah, it's. I think you have to have the. I think you have to have this element raised before you can recognize it, if that makes sense. You know, you need somebody to point out sometimes the fact that yeah, your palette should change for the seasons.
Yeah. And Mary Ann asked a question earlier. She said, I was interested to know why Howard suggested tube paints rather than pans. And I guess maybe that's just to do with the flexibility of, you just have a
Yeah.
certain amount, or
Who is that? Sorry.
Mary Ann.
Marianne, yeah, it's a big, actually, it's a very, very big important point. The reason why I insist on tube paints is because if you're painting in the loose style, you're wanting to paint in the loose style. Um, Access to a volume of ready paint is essential. So if you think about it, if you're working from those little dried out cakes, those pans that we tend to use perhaps more for smaller paintings, for field sketching, the amount of paint we need sometimes when we're working in the loose style is you need a volume of paint very quickly. You're not going to get that from the dried out pans, from a dried out pan. You're if you even got there in 5 minutes, your window of opportunity to get that second color on top of a damp first color has gone. You know, that's the moment is gone. There's a very, very good question, and in a way, you know, I think it's something that it gets missed. I think if it might suggest to me that Marianne is painting small, or I don't know, obviously, but she may be painting on a fairly small scale, and she may have problems with getting beautiful transitions between in the wet and wet moments, in the working wet into wet, because it gets very difficult to do that working from cakes, from pans.
Yeah, she says she's got both actually. She has pans and tubes. And I would
Okay.
imagine that sometimes you're just allured when you're shopping online or in an art shop, you're probably just lured into, oh, that looks a nice palette, and it comes with the
Yeah.
pans included, and you
I
can
think
go
so.
ahead
I
with
think
it.
you're right.
Yeah,
We all
yeah.
do it. I've been guilty.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I guess a question from me as well, relating to this topic is, Are we going to, are by the end of these 4 episodes, Howard, are we going to need to purchase 500 million different tubes of paint, or are you deliberately going to keep it fairly more concise so that it's easier to manage?
The latter, John. Yeah. Yeah, I'm a great believer in keeping your paints to a minimum as much as possible, and I'd say that for most materials. I try to work from just 3 or 5 brushes most of the time. So no, there won't be a shopping list that as long as your arm for, just to sort of participate.
Yes, good, good. And will you be covering the sort of the mixing of the different paints as well, and
Yeah,
how?
absolutely. I'm gonna start this one off actually with a simple little swatch that I've made of the colors that we'll be using. So
Brilliant.
that could be useful if it's on screen for people to pause their video when they're watching it back. So they'll, it's 7 colors, and that includes a little bit of white. So it's effectively it's 6 colors.
Yeah.
Um, so sorry, sorry, it's 5 colors. The neutral being the 6th color, but I'll explain this further when we start.
Yeah, brilliant. And yes, great. And obviously, if you've got any questions as we go along in this live show, please jot that down. And if you're watching the video, be love to have your comments on the class info page if you've got any comments as we go along as well. Right. Okay. So over to you, Howard, to take it away with the winter palette.
By doing this with a very judiciously, very just carefully go into some of those shapes, softening them like this, then you'll bring back that snowy landscape effect that we set out to get. Even here, and I'm borrowing paint. Remember, there's no paint in this brush at the moment. I'm sort of borrowing paint. If I run the brush into this little snowy wall down here, I know that there must be I know that there must be paint in the fibers of this brush. So I can just drag these shapes gently and subtly across the foreground here. I will take a little bit of ultramarine blue here, just to bring a bit of coolness into the foreground. And I want to leave it there for the moment, at least. I think that's as far as we can take it, probably. Let me just put the mount around this to establish. Isolating it in the mount is it's a very useful thing to do. I'll show you. The mount goes around it. You can sort of see whether it's working or not.
Oh, that's lovely.
So maybe a little bit, it's looking like on your screen, it might be a little bit sort of overexposed on mine there at the moment. But if I drop these lights down a little bit. Yeah, that's a bit better, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, and if you really wanted to add a little bit of an effect to it, you can always, and I do this quite a lot, always put a little bit of white gouache spatter. So I take it straight from the tube. This is just Winsor & Newton's Designer's Gouache White, titanium white. I'll take a size 5 round brush with lots of water in it, take it straight to the tube like this, and then just tap over some, these flurries of snow that are obviously still sort of hanging around. If you tap them onto the darkest areas, obviously they're going to show up best, and that's the place to target when you're doing this. Target the darkest area of your painting, and then the odd large flake might come down. And so there we are, a quick recap. Warm and cool colors throughout. The use of the gouache to give that powdery effect of the distant hillside or the background. And I think, the things I'd be checking, folks, if you're finishing your painting is have you maintained that movement? It's very important. It's very easy to lose things like that when you're working through a painting, because you're distracted by getting some other part of it looking good, looking right. So when I, for instance, I spot this area here. I've got my brush. That, to me, that's not the right tonal value on the back end of that house there. I want to push that house back a little bit by making the tonal value of this end of the building much closer to the tonal value of the trees or whatever it is we can see behind it. When you do that, that building gets pushed back that way more. It was too light, which meant it was sort of optically, it was looking like the building was twisting back this way. Now that I've matched the tonal value at the back end of this building to the area behind it, it's pushed the house back where it should be.
Brilliant. Howard, that has been a fantastic hour/hour and a half. Thank you so much. That was really lovely.